and I am running for the mayor's seat. I am a fifth generation El Paso and ran for office in 2005 because I was very concerned about the direction that the city government was going in. Was lucky enough to get in with people like Beto O'Rourke and Susie Bird, and I felt the thread that we shared in common was, let's set the bar very high for this community. We already saw what the low bar got us, now let's set the bar high. Started off with things like the downtown revitalization plan, which we're now starting to see the fruits of. 2007 worked on the stormwater utility because this community did not invest in its stormwater infrastructure. We all saw what the storm of 2007 did. Worked against ASARCO to shut it down, which I'm very glad to say that that operation is no longer running in this community. And then did things like the bond election. The bond election, from my perspective, an unqualified success. The first two propositions passed by about 73%. And so there's an understanding and expectation that this community is now moving in a very positive direction and want to continue on with the momentum that the community is seeing.
Am I ready, Ken?
Yep.
Right. You have 1 minute to answer. Name the pros and cons of a city government that's run with a city manager, and do you plan to change that structure of city government?
Yeah. The voters in 2004 voted to have a city manager form of government. The idea being you want a professional running your organization. No different from what used to be Thompson Hospital, now UMC. No different from El Paso Community College or UTEP. I fully support the city manager form of government. Reason being, you want a professional running your city in terms of the hiring and firing. You want to leave the public policy portion to the elected officials. And I'm not here to say the city manager is a perfect form of government. It's not. But I think in terms of professionalism and continuity, the results speak for themselves. And I know a lot of people have some personality issues with Joyce Wilson. But from my perspective, overall, she's done a good job. And on top of that, I endorse the idea of a professional running our local government.
Thank you, Rep. Thank you, Rep. The recent debate over immigration reform has brought up the question of border security. In your opinion, is our border with Mexico secure? And how would you advise, as Mayor of El Paso, Washington, to proceed with any further legislation?
I think the situation with the border is 100% broken. For many years, the focus has been security, 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 with a lack of perspective on efficiency. And we're now seeing what the long bridge wait times are doing to the local economy. 2 weeks ago, I took a group of elected officials and business leaders to see what's taking place in Juarez. And what we learned from the tours of the maquilas is all of them are significantly increasing their workforce. And for every 5 maquila jobs, you get about 1 El Paso job. But one of the things that is getting in the way of their investment is the long bridge wait times. And I think you can have security without compromising efficiency. If you want to get into the FBI building in Washington, D.C., you need your thumbprint. And that ensures that the person who's going in has pre-clearance, but also doesn't take 2 minutes to check everyone that's going in. I think we can replicate that type of system here in the border.
Good evening, Representative Ortega.
Good evening.
El Paso has earned the distinction of being named the safest city in the United States for the past 3 years. The El Paso Firemen and Policemen's Pension Fund is now facing a $270 million shortfall. As mayor, what steps would you take to address this issue, and would you support an increase of the city's contribution to that fund?
Great question. 2 days ago, met with Ron Martin, and he is the president of the El Paso Municipal Police Officers Association. We had a very frank conversation. And at the end of the conversation, I think we both agreed to the same thing. Right now, the pension is being studied by a group called Gallagher. And within the next several weeks, they're going to be releasing their recommendation concerning whether or not the pension needs a fix now, or whether or not we can wait and to see if the market will correct the problem that we're seeing with the pension. The problem is the current scope right now takes a look at 2008, and we all know that included the economic downturn. There's some out there that are optimistic that when we take into account the expectation for future growth in the market, you're not going to have to go back to, ultimately, the taxpayer for the fix. But if, in the opinion of the experts, the study, and the individuals with the police and fire pension, if the fix needs to be now, then I'll support the fix. Okay.
All right, you have 2 minutes to answer this question. The ballpark's coming, and we want to know what your personal commitment is to making the full extent of the development expectation a reality for the citizens of El Paso.
Great question. And let me say this, I know the ballpark was controversial in some circles. When I ran in 2005, I was very clear with what the expectation was. The expectation was an ambitious direction for the community of El Paso. And that means sometimes making tough decisions that aren't always going to be embraced by everyone. Taking that same message was reelected in 2009 by about 3/5 of the voters in the district that I represent. In terms of the ballpark, one of the reasons I support it is because of the prospects for spurring redevelopment. And that's happening as we speak right now in downtown El Paso. Just last week, went to visit 2 new restaurants that opened up in the Union Plaza district. One being Valentine's, which, from the bakery family, they do tacos, tortas, etc., and the other being Cafe Italia. When I talked to the owners, one of the reasons they decided to invest in that area is because of the expectation that baseball is going to bring. I've also had conversations with Judge Robert Pearson. He has some properties that are going to be right across the street from the ballpark. I got him with some city staffers to take a look at different ways that he can start to redevelop. And so the extent that we can play a role to facilitate redevelopment and reinvestment in that area, I want to do so, and have taken a very active role with some of the property owners down there, people like Miguel Fernandez, who owns the Sotoa building, people like Octavio Gomez, who opened up the garden down there, to make sure they have all of the information necessary so that they can make their redevelopment take place, and ultimately add dollars onto our tax roll. That is the end game of all of this, to make sure that we're growing our tax base so that we mitigate the burden on the residential homeowner. That's part of the game plan, and it's working. In 2005, the government that we inherited was charging about 69 cents per $100 valuation. Now we're down to about 65. And so that's the direction that we want to go in. Want to do that by growing out the tax base here in the community. A big chunk of that is downtown redevelopment.
You have 1 minute to give a closing statement.
I want to thank the Westside Democrats for their invitation. Really, I think it comes down to, between me and the other candidates, a candidate who has a proven track record, and one who's going to advocate for ambition for El Paso. And I make no excuses for that. That's why I ran for office, and I think that's what we're seeing in the community today. And when you take a look at people who are behind my campaign, I think you have a very strong sector of the business community, very strong sector of neighborhood leadership, and then pretty much most of the political leadership here in town. People like Beto O'Rourke, people like Veronica Escobar, people like Joe Moody, because they realize through working with me that the direction that this community is moving in is a very ambitious and positive one. And we want to continue on with that movement and progress here for El Paso. Good things are on the horizon. We're not at a crossroads. The crossroads are behind us. This community is moving forward. And I think what I'd ask you to do is vote for the person who helped get us to where we're at today. I thank you very much.